There's basically a distance you can go. It's about this long before you make a footstep. But if you let go of shift, you don't make noise for a second. So see, now I'm moving much quicker. And it still is giving me a nice advantage. A lot of you guys might kind of walk up like this and neglect to look at this corner here. So this is, you know, not specific to just this spot, but this definitely can't happen in this spot where you're kind of like walking up here and then someone's actually standing right here waiting for you, right? If you find information like this throughout the video helpful, make sure to check out the full Valorant competitive fundamentals course in my Patreon link down in the description below. Basically, it's information just like it is throughout this video, except for over a full hour. Hey guys, so in today's banger, I'm going to be bringing you 5 of the most common Valorant mechanics that are incorrectly performed by most people. And the first is going to be taking fights. Now, in a lot of fights, people are going to do something called crouch spraying, which is something that looks like this. And it's basically just where you crouch and spray and you're committing to a fight in such a way. The reason this is bad, as many of you guys might be able to guess, is that it makes your body really small and it makes it harder for you to move when you're crouching, right? So, and on top of that, spraying is actually the worst way to take fights in long ranges in this game. So you're generally going to be like tapping. Now, a lot of you guys might be saying something like, well, I see a lot of pro players crouch spray, or I see a lot of pro players like Primi, who's been blowing up recently, who peeks something like this whenever he peeks. But you have to understand that who he's playing against is a very, very different target audience. And on top of that, a lot of us are not going to be able to appropriately or properly pull some of these mechanics off. And at the end of the day, they're actually going to be hurting us more than they're going to be harming us. So I think really what you guys should understand is that crouching is not generally going to be something you want to do until you're much more skilled, like maybe Diamond Ascendant. And if you are in those ranks, you have to really ask yourself, like, is crouch spraying something that's hurting me? And generally, guys, what you want to be replacing crouch spraying with is something called counter strafing. So instead of doing this, it looks like this. And notice how I'm much more nimble on my feet, so it's much easier for me to kind of shift back and forth. Whereas if I'm going like this when I'm crouched, it's like basically impossible for me to move at all. But like this, I'm tapping and I'm very nimble on my feet. Also, guys, whenever you're in a lower rank and you crouch spray, it's going to make the enemies have probably an easier time hitting you, and even in high ranks have an easier time hitting you. The reason this is the case is because whenever you crouch, people's crosshair placement in something like gold is already going to be pretty bad. So whenever you crouch, they're gonna have their crosshair basically on you. Now, if you're in a high rank, this is obviously not going to be the case. But generally, guys, I would recommend not crouch spraying. Unless you're like a super close range with a Phantom and you're in a higher rank and you know kind of more what you're doing. But if you're doing it without thinking about it, then it's probably going to be bad. Next, guys, I'm going to be teaching you about pre-aiming and crosshair placement in different situations and how you can get better at that. So whenever we're coming into this place here, a lot of you guys might kind of walk up like this and neglect to look at this corner here. So this is, you know, not specific to just this spot, but this definitely can't happen in this spot where you're kind of like walking up here and then someone's actually standing right here waiting for you, right? And you're just not thinking about, oh, they might be right there. So one, this has to do with crosshair placement, but it also has to do with like understanding where enemies can be and where enemies are commonly at. So, you know, just in this situation, what I would recommend is like try to walk up in a custom game and just kind of place your crosshair in every situation where someone could be. It's not very likely for someone to be here, but my crosshair generally tends to flow there. And I'm going to look here and slowly kind of clear a window. And then next is going to be this corner, right? At this point, I'm going to walk up like this, make sure there's no one in that corner. Check here, maybe wait a second. You kind of notice you have to be thorough, but you can't be too slow at the same time, right? You don't want to be too quick, you don't want to be too slow, but you want to give your opponent a chance to peek. Because, right, the thing is, what if someone's like right here, right? They're like right here as you're kind of walking in right here. But, you know, you're just going to walk up really fast and then they peek you and then you die. But if they're going to sit here and kind of jiggle slowly after like 4 or 5 seconds, then you have them, right? It's an easy kill. So this can be easier said than done sometimes, but being very thorough, right? So if you guys struggle to clear something out like this, for example, and you're just really not sure how to go in, I would recommend coming into a custom game and just kind of getting comfortable and thinking, okay, like where is someone likely to be? So we're coming up to B here. I'm gonna clear this link first. I might clear over here. Remember, kind of thorough. If they have a jet that's been playing up top, you can kind of clear up there, but generally that's not something I look at. It's just something you can be aware of in your mind. And here, this is tricky, right? Because you have 2 places you have to clear at once. Maybe even 3 if you're going to look up there. But generally, I would recommend just picking a side and quickly looking the other way. And then obviously you have to be aware of here and here. But usually if you're going to catch someone in one of these links, you'll catch them as you're like here, because they'll be peeking you. But that's how I would do it, and then you can kind of walking up and slowly clearing these things. I'm clearing against the wall here, not neglecting this side. So if I'm like this and I'm just looking here and I neglect to look over here because I forget that that's a corner, then I can get killed from there, right? So you have to be very careful. But anyways, guys, this is just kind of how I would recommend practicing this. This is something that's very necessary for taking control of areas. If you're just kind of running in like this, then you're going to get shot from one of these corners. You're going to get shot from somewhere you're not expecting or you're not thinking about, and it's going to ultimately lead to you losing games. So in this tip, guys, I'm going to be teaching you something that you probably aren't even aware exists, and it can be really effective for a few different situations, which I will explain. But first of all, it has to do with how much noise you make whenever you're running. So notice the sound of the ground here. It's pretty loud, right? Like if there's someone sitting in here, they'd definitely be able to hear you. They'd be able to catch you off if you're running. But notice how right now I'm shift walking and I'm not making any noise. But now I'm actually not shift walking and I'm moving a lot quicker and I'm not making noise, right? You might hear me make a footstep every now and then. But there's basically a distance you can go. It's about this long before you make a footstep. And now I'll show you guys the footstep. So you can go about this long without making noise. And this can be really effective. It's okay, you should practice it in the range. Like you hear me still making steps here and messing it up a little bit. But there's a reason you want to do this. And it's mainly to be peeking. So like right, whenever you're peeking something, like let's say we're peeking into here, right? Like I want to peek window. Well, you don't want to shift walk it, right? Like yeah, you don't want to make noise, but you also don't want to shift walk because you're again exposing yourself too slowly, right? So if you're exposing yourself super slowly, what it's going to look like from the enemy's perspective is they're just going to see your shoulder slowly appear, and then they're just going to shoot you because it's a very easy kill for them, no matter what rank they are. But if you let go of shift, you don't make noise for a second. So see, now I'm moving much quicker, and it still is giving me a nice advantage. I'm not making noise, and I'm moving quickly. So that's how you guys want to take fights. And obviously, you want to be quiet here because you don't want the enemies to know that you're coming into garage. And this is how you always clear stuff out. This is how you see pros clear stuff out quickly without making noise. It's because they're not holding shift, but they're also not going too far, right? Because you can go so far until you make a step. This is probably news to a lot of you guys. This is a really effective tip. It's something you want to be implementing to many of your gunfights. Okay, guys, so my next tip to you guys is going to be regarding flanking. This is something that's honestly not talked about a whole lot, but it is actually really important. So a lot of you guys might be playing like here in this spot. This is a very good spot to play. You might even peek this. Sometimes you might peek this and there's nobody here, and then your gut instinct is to run back and go all the way through spawn. And then every single round that you play in garage, you're going to rotate the same way every single time. But what you want to realize is there's a different way that you can rotate. So you can come through here and come up through window. This is what I like to do every single pistol round. Now, I'm going to run. You're not supposed to run generally, but you can start walking around here if you want. And you can just sit here. There are obviously going to be sentinels you have to worry about, like a Cypher trip or a Killjoy turret. But you do have smokes as jet. You can't updraft over trips as jet. And if you break them, it's still a really good flank. And a lot of the time in lower ranks, there's not going to be stuff set up. So my point here is you have to really be willing to kind of test the waters here. So you're like kind of walking up like this, right? I can almost guarantee they're not going to expect you the first time you do this. There may or may not be a trip here. In lower ranks, you're probably not going to have to worry about it all the time until you actually start flanking. And then you're going to see like 3 people here, and it's just free kills. Something else that can happen is, there can be lurkers obviously, but sometimes you'll walk up to here, and then you'll have, or you might have the whole enemy team start running back toward you from A, and then you just want to be a little patient, right? They're really probably not going to be expecting you here. So you can let a few people run, and then you can start mowing them down. If it's on pistol round, you can still mow them down with your ghost or whatever weapon you have. And this can be a really effective way to catch your enemies off guard. Whereas if you rotate through spawn, then it's going to be bad. The other thing that's really nice about doing this is it gives you and your team a whole lot of information, right? So it tells your team if they're actually committing A or if they're going to all start rotating back, because you can hear a bunch of footsteps right here or whatever, right? So this is going to be really beneficial for you guys to kind of experiment with. Now, obviously, if you're doing this a lot and then they're starting to counter you, like there's like a Cypher sitting up here waiting for you, then you can play a little more passive and not just like run it through and try to flank them. But I would just recommend experimenting a little bit.